session. On behalf of the Beaver Dam Area Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and especially to our candidates for answering questions and helping the public be a little bit more informed when it comes time to voting. Also, a special thanks to our American Legion. This is an awesome facility that is rentable, and they've been a great partner in doing these forums. Also, thank you to Mike Thronson, our moderator, and Craig Caston for keeping time. He always does that for me because I can't keep track of time. I get too distracted. And also to our media that is present tonight from WBEV, Daily Dodge, as well as the Daily Citizen. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who will get this going.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. And once again, good evening, everybody. And thank you so much for being here. It's my honor to be asked back to moderate this candidates forum. We have a very nice audience behind me here in the Legion building tonight. So thank you to those folks that are here and also those that are tuned in on Daily Dodge TV tonight. We thank you for joining us. Again, thanks to Craig Caston, my timekeeper over here on my right, and Kevin Haugen from WBEV Radio is here and going to be helping out with the question and answer session that'll be starting here in just a moment. We have, of course, our 4 candidates. We have our 2 Beaver Dam mayoral candidates here tonight, and I want to welcome them at this time, Jack Yudds and Bobby Mark. Thank you so much, both, for being here and giving up some time to be with us. And our 37th Assembly District candidates, Mark Bourne and Latoya Bates, welcome to you as well. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a little bit right now just about the format, and I know the 4 candidates have been briefed, but we'll just run this down again here, and that way the audience at home and here in the building can get an idea. So we have several sections or segments tonight. We're going to start here in just a moment. We'll give each candidate a minute to make an introductory statement, introduce themselves, get things going tonight. We're then going to move in to our second segment, which is going to be questions from the media. A little bit later on, after that section has wrapped up, we will then have a section where you, the candidates, will have a chance to ask questions of each other. And then our fourth segment tonight, after that wraps up, we're going to take questions from our audience members here in the Legion building, and then we'll wrap it up with concluding remarks for all 4 of you. So we'll talk about each segment as we go along, but we'd like to get things started with our introductory remarks, and we're just going to go in order from left to right, my left to my right, and we'll start with our mayoral candidates. Jack Yudds, we're going to give you the floor first, and again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Jack Yudds. I'm the 7th Ward District Alderman right now. I'm the council president. I've been on the council for going on 6 years. I'm on the planning committee, on the senior advisor committee. I'm on the planning meeting. I've been on the operations committee and presently on the admin committee.
All right, thank you, Jack, for being here. Bobby Mark, we'll give you the floor.
Hi, my name is Bobby Mark, and I'm running for mayor because I've been excited by the changes that we've all seen under Mayor Gluin, and I want to continue to move Beaver Dam forward. I've been on the city council for 2.5 years. During that time, I've also sat on the Beaver Dam Area Development Board, and for the past 1.5 years, I've been the chair of the City Administrative Committee. As a council member, I'm proud to have voted for 4 new housing projects, the continuation of downtown revitalization, expanded childcare, and numerous street projects. Before joining the council, I taught history, economics, and government at Beaver Dam High School for 30 years. I am also active in the community, including as a member of the advisory board for the Beaver Dam Area Community Foundation and as president of the local branch of AAUW. All of these experiences have given me the knowledge and skills to continue to move Beaver Dam forward. Thank you.
All right, and thank you very much for being here tonight. With that, we're going to move over to our Assembly District candidates. Mark Bourne, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Chamber and the radio station for putting this program on. Certainly appreciate that opportunity. I am Mark Bourne. I have had the honor for the last 6 terms to represent our community in the Wisconsin State Assembly. I was born and raised here in Beaver Dam. I went to Lincoln Elementary School and graduated from the Beaver Dam High School. And yes, in the early 90s, I could have been found in Miss Mark's World History class. That is true. And After college, I spent 15 years serving our community as an employee of the Dodge County Sheriff's Office, and since then have been in the state legislature, and have served on a lot of committees there, and some of that focus was on the interest in criminal justice and keeping our communities safe early on. For the last 8 years, I have been on the Budget Committee, the Joint Finance Committee, the last 4 years as the co-chair of that committee, and have certainly had an incredible opportunity to work on the priorities of the people of this district, as well as work with county and local officials and local organizations to bring great things to the area.
Thank you very much, Mark. We do appreciate you being here. And LaToya Bates, we're going to give you the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, and of course, thanks for having me here. It's exciting to be here tonight and talk to voters and hopefully get to have a great amount of information so we have the ability to make an informed decision coming up in November. I live in Mayville. I am a small business owner. I am also an educator, and I taught K-12 in public school for about 13 years before moving on and starting to work in higher education. I was able to work in a local seminary for many years and then moved on to the UW system. I know that candidates for mayor have a little bit of an easier job because the mayor is highly visible, and the work that the Senate and the Assembly does sometimes is a little covert. You don't get to see it. Just want to remind everyone to ask lots of questions, that running for election is a job interview, and this is your turn to have that panel review to see who you're going to vote for. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, before we move into our Q&A session here with the media, I probably should mention this, and maybe you heard it already, but with Craig here keeping time, during the question and answer session, each candidate will have up to a minute to respond to a particular question that'll be asked by Kevin Haugen. And Craig has his 30-second warning sign for you. When you hear the bell, that means that that's time. Now, we're not going to immediately stop you right when the bell sounds. Just know that that's the time to wrap up your thoughts. And we do that because we want to be fair to all of you, equal time, and we don't want to be here until 7 a.m. So that's why we do that. But we'll move in now to our media question and answer session. And I'd like to introduce my colleague and good friend from WBEV and Good Karma Brands. This is Kevin Haugen.
Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. And again, I want to thank 4 of our candidates here for taking the time to speak with members of our community today. My first question is for the candidates for the Assembly District 37, and the questions I will be asking tonight are directed to both candidates. I will say the names of who I will want to go first, and then the individual will then have a chance to respond afterwards. But my first question is, does there need to be more efforts by the state legislature to reshape healthcare in Wisconsin, either by expanding access to mental health services, decreasing medication costs, or funding hospitals in rural and underserved communities? And Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that's been a priority for several budgets now, and we're going to keep building on that. We've seen increases in Medicaid rates in the last 2 budgets. We've seen increased investments in mental health. There's some great examples of that in the area with some of the grant programs that we've created in the legislature that Church Health Services participates in our schools right here in the 37th Assembly District, in almost every school now. It started out in Waupun and then Beaver Dam, and now has moved in to other schools in Dodge and Fond du Lac County. And so I think we'll continue to build on some of those successes, and I think the rural hospital thing is probably the biggest hospital challenge facing us right now. And it's not one that Wisconsin will solve alone, because too much of it's tied up in federal funding and federal regulation. And so we're going to need some partnerships there, but we're certainly going to look to be part of that solution.
LaToya?
Oh, I would agree. I think that there needs to be a bigger investment in mental health care and also in healthcare overall in rural Wisconsin. I love the idea of having additional mental health care services in schools, but we know that realistically there just isn't enough access. Families who have crises have to wait for a long period of time, and providers are just not available as they could and should be. In addition, we have not done a very good job at all of tackling the issues with Medicare and Medicaid. We have had hospital closures because that reimbursement rate is too low. We had the legislators sat on funding that should have and could have gone to hospitals that were closing for a considerable period of time. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done, and I honestly don't understand why it's taking so long to get to that point.
All right, my next question is for the candidates for Beaver Dam Mayor. My question is, how will you be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars if elected mayor? And Bobby, we'll start with you.
This is a very timely question. We are right in the middle of budget season. We just finished one budget workshop, and we'll be having another one. The Common Council is always aware of the money that they are spending, and they're very aware of the fact that it's taxpayer dollars. And as long as we create a responsible budget and then stick to that budget throughout the year, we're doing a good job. And the council has been very good about sticking within the budget guidelines that we set for ourselves each budget season. So it all comes down to the budget and then sticking with the budget.
Jack, go ahead.
The biggest thing I see right in front of us right now is the council wants to hire an HR manager. It's gonna cost the city $100,000. We have a city administrator making $145,000, and that's in his job description. So what is going on? We got a director of finance. We gave her a $15,000 or $20,000 raise to help out the administrator. Now he wants a personnel somebody. Did we make a mistake here? I mean, we're spending $100,000 we don't need to. I mean, that's called accounting for your dollars. Make someone stand up and say, do your job.
Let's go back to the candidates for Wisconsin Assembly District 37. My second question is, how does the legislature achieve reducing the tax burden for the middle class and retirees? And LaToya, we'll start with you.
That's a great question. I just want to point out there's a lot of talk and rhetoric about Democrats and taxes, and let me just tell you, no one hates taxes more than I do. I think that there is a need to be responsible with taxation. There's also a need to make sure that we're raising enough money to fund the programs and services that we need in the state. We continue to talk about middle-class tax breaks, but what they simply recently offered was really an extension of the middle class, so that people who made a whole lot more money were suddenly middle class, and then they could have a tax break, but not the actual struggling families that live in our district and in our state. So what we need to do is really be realistic and to tax fairly large businesses and folks that make more money. And that would allow us to have the needs met in our budget and then give some much needed relief to our middle class taxpayers.
Mark, go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, from this last session, the way it looks, what we really need to cut taxes is the new governor, because we sent him 4 different proposals. All of them focused on the middle class and retirees in different ways. He vetoed every one of them. You know, the middle class bracket is a sizable bracket in Wisconsin. The third bracket starts at a little below 30,000, I think 28,000, and goes into the 300,000s. But that captures all of your small businesses that operate as LLCs instead of corporations. That captures all of your middle class families here in Wisconsin. And we focused on reducing that bracket. And that's where I think the priority should have been in these high inflation times. Right now, retirees and middle-class families could have had a little bit more of that money in their pocket to help balance these family budgets during this high inflation. And it's unfortunate that the governor couldn't find a path on any of those, as we offered a variety of different ways to do it. And so I think that will be priority one when we get back into session after the election, is to continue to try to return funds to the middle class and retirees.
Let's go back to the candidates for Beaver Dam Mayor. My second question here tonight is, what are your plans to continue to address Beaver Dam's infrastructure, such as roads, water and sewer systems, city buildings, and parks? And Jack, we'll start with you.
Well, right now we set aside $1 million a year for road construction. We're still looking for grant money as best we can. We're gonna be doing Front Street and Beaver Street near the theater downtown. We were gonna do Madison Street next year, but the grant for Front and Beaver Street, we have to have it in construction by July 1st, I believe it was. And the Madison Street construction project is, we got 5 years to do it. We're trying to put together a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year plan for road construction.
Bobby, go ahead.
And I would agree. As Jack knows, I don't know if most citizens know that the city has what's called a capital improvement plan, and it looks down the road and it looks at all of the major infrastructure items in our assets that our community has and what we need to maintain them. And it spreads it out looking ahead. So we know if, for example, a year or two ago, we needed a new fire truck. That's $2 million. Then there's road construction, and you can't get a road built for less than $1 million. So it has been planned out for quite some time. The question is then when we look at it all go back to the budget. When we sit down and make our budget for the following year, looking at how those capital improvements are going to fit into the budget, how much of it we can fund with tax dollars, and how much we're going to have to borrow. And that's always the juggling act.
Let's now move back to the candidates with for the Wisconsin Assembly District 37. My third question is teachers across the state are dealing with growing classroom sizes, making it difficult to focus on individual students' needs. If elected, how will you work to ease this burden and increase classroom support for teachers? And Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that it depends on the district, because some districts with declining enrollment, the classrooms are actually getting quite small, and that's part of what's impacting their budget. But the reality is we have made historic investments in education, $1 billion of new money in this budget. We spend over $17.5 billion of biennial budget now just on K through 12 education in the state. So we make major investments in that area, as we should. It's the future of our state. And so we'll continue, I'm sure, to make strong investments there, but some of it is more about the challenges of declining enrollment in these small towns, and we're going to have to find ways to help support schools and probably more consolidation. Of course, these are all local decisions, but I think we're going to look to work with districts to help them do more to help with their declining size of their classrooms in a lot of these rural areas.
Toya, go ahead.
It's fascinating. Yeah, there needs to be something done with the way that we calculate budgets for our local schools. We also have a whole lot of money going to private schools when our public schools really need it. The declining enrollment is a sign of something because the kids are around, they're going to school somewhere, just not in our public schools. We talked, Mark, you mentioned about investments in education. Now, we have nearly half of the schools in the state have had referendums on their ballots recently because they do not have enough money to cover the needs of the school and the operational costs. We had a $50 million that was allocated for a curriculum in Wisconsin, and I do not know why, but the legislative team has not been able to get that to schools. We have a lot of issues that lead to those enrollment problems. We have a lot of issues that are leading to those classroom sizes, but what we need to do is take some of the surplus and invest it into our schools. That will allow us to have a stronger public school system, and it will help with the classroom issues that you mentioned.
Back to the candidates for Beaver Dam Mayor. My third question is how will your experience serving on the Common Council guide your decision-making process as mayor? And Bobby, we'll start with you.
First of all, there were several things that I was pleasantly surprised with when I joined the city council. First of all, I was impressed with the level of commitment and dedication that I saw from my council members. These are people you don't really hear too much about and we're not too aware of, but I found them to be very forthright and sincerely interested in wrestling with the issues that the city faces. I also feel that I've learned so much in my 2.5 years on council, not only from attending council meetings and as chair of the administrative committee, but I've also attended several 2-day workshops that have been held around the state. I've done Zoom workshops. There's just so much to know when it comes to the municipality. It's like a whole universe. And I've really enjoyed learning about it, but I feel I have a long way to go.
Go ahead, Jack.
Can you repeat the question to make
Yes,
sure I got
yeah.
it right?
No, absolutely. How will your experience serving on the Common Council guide your decision-making process as mayor?
Quite a bit. I've attended every special operation meeting for any road construction, special pond construction. Since I've been on the city council, I've never missed one. I've only missed one council meeting due to my brother-in-law's death. I've gone, when there wasn't an operation committee meeting, I went to the admin committee. I go to a lot of the PFC meetings. I go to every meeting I can in City Hall that learn as much information I can to understand the operation of what goes on within the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the candidates for Wisconsin Assembly District 37. My fourth question is, if elected, how will you work to support police, fire, and emergency services throughout the 37th Assembly District? And Latoya, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I have worked in law enforcement for about 3 years. I worked with probation and parole, and I have many friends and family members who are still proud to serve as troopers, and gotta give a shout out to our state troopers and other aspects of law enforcement. Gotta go home after this, you know. I think that law enforcement has a job to do, and I think that one of the things that we can do to really support them is to take some things off their plate. They are called out to a variety of issues, domestic violence, truancy, all kind of stuff that could be prevented if we have a better investment again in our schools and after-school programs, if we are investing in mental health services as well. We have lots of OWI issues, and having treatment resources and mental health resources will help with that. But also I think that we need to continue to fund our civil servants, especially the fire department and our law enforcement as well.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we made a huge step in the right direction in this last budget with a historic increase in shared revenue, tying it to the sales tax, so it will continue to grow. That was just announced, I think, yesterday of what this next year's additional revenue to local governments will be with the increase in the sales tax. And that was to be focused on public safety because we knew that that was important, and not just important in big cities, but in rural parts of the state too, and that was an important part of that reform. So we are, I think, looking forward to looking how that went and making further investments in those areas as needed. I think another part of that that's often forgotten is corrections. We made historic increases there as well to try to stabilize our prison staffing, which is an important part of public safety. And there are going to be other areas that we need to invest in besides the corrections staff in those state prisons, and I think that will be part of the next budget as well.
Said back to the candidates for Beaver Dam Mayor, my fourth question tonight. In your opinion, is enough being done to retain and draw in young professionals to Beaver Dam? And Jack, we'll start with you.
I believe no. What we can do, I don't know for sure, but whatever we can do would bring new businesses in, bringing new ideas in, bring new activities to Beaver Dam, new recreational ideas. You know, it seems like everybody wants bike paths. I mean, is that gonna bring them in? I don't know. But we gotta do what we gotta do to keep the younger people around. Right now, they live in Beaver Dam and they drive to Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby, we'll go to you.
Council's well aware of the need to try and attract and retain new citizens. I think we've done a lot of things in recent years to do this. You can look at the 4 new housing projects that we have currently in the city, and we're continuing to look for more. We've expanded childcare options, which is a major issue for young families. We continue downtown revitalization. An attractive, vital downtown is the heartbeat of any community, and it attracts visitors and potential citizens. And we've been working on sustainability because sustainability is important to younger generations, as it should be to all generations, and they look for places that are pursuing sustainable answers to our community's problems. So I think we have been working in that direction.
Thank you. Back to our candidates with the Wisconsin Assembly District 37. My fifth and final question for those candidates tonight. With the cost of living continuing to rise, is it feasible to increase Wisconsin's minimum wage? And Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that's really misunderstood. In this economy, this is not an issue. If you look around at what jobs are available, no one is starting at minimum wage. They're not starting at double minimum wage in this area right now, unless you are starting at a true entry-level job as a 16-year-old or something like that, washing dishes. So the fact is that right now our economy and our workforce shortage is so strong that really in most places the minimum wage isn't even discussed anymore. It's just not an issue. And we need to continue to focus on workforce, growing our workforce, educating our workforce, and technology to support our continued growth of our Wisconsin economy that will help us fund all the things that were in your earlier questions, like our hospital needs and our education needs, and that's really what the key needs to be.
Latoya, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I almost agree. I think that minimum wage sets a tone, and there are still people who have entry-level jobs and are not making minimum wage. Another thing that I really do not understand still is why hospitality staff does not make a basic minimum wage either. I think that if it doesn't really matter because people are starting at higher salaries, then it's an easy first step for us to make to stabilize and say this is a bare minimum. Then other companies, people who are looking to hire, need to increase their wages even more to be on tone and on set with that.
Thank you very much. Back to the candidates for Beaver Dam Mayor. My last question for our candidates, again, for Beaver Dam Mayor is, how do you envision the future of public transportation in the city of Beaver Dam? And Bobby, we'll start with you.
The council's been looking at this question for several years now. We authorized and paid for a study so that we could see what the likelihood was of us expanding our public transportation system. We're right smack dab in the middle of that now. We're looking at other options. Right now, one of the things we're exploring is using improved technology to make it easier for users of public transportation to schedule rides and to make it easier for the providers of those rides to connect with riders. So we have looked at options, and we're in the middle of that process. We're hoping to make some changes soon.
Jack, we'll go to you.
We just spent $60,000 from our ARPA money to do a study to tell us we just need 2 new taxis between the hours of 9 and 3 for $60,000. We looked at bus stops. We looked at buses coming close to your house. We had looked at buses or small vans going closer to houses or set routes. We'd have to build bus stops. It just didn't turn out that it came right down to we need more taxi service, and people don't want to wait 2 hours for their taxi. Simple as that.
Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you very much, Kevin. That concludes our questions from the media segment. Again, thanks to Kevin Haugen, News Director from WBEV Radio. Our next segment, as we continue our candidates forum, this is the chance now, you candidates, you four, will have the opportunity to ask questions of each other. And the way we'll work this is the candidate who is asked the question will have a minute to respond. Then the candidate who posed that question, if they would like, would have another 30 seconds to respond. And we'll go back and forth, and we'll do this for about maybe 15, 20 minutes, or until we're out of questions, so whichever comes first. But I do want to start this time with our Beaver Dam mayoral candidates. Jack Yutz, do you have a question you would like to ask Bobby Mark?
Yes. You said on the council floor that you didn't want to put yourself out there, but in the meantime, by the statement, how do you feel how it's going to affect the city? Because you didn't want to run for mayor, you wanted to be appointed mayor. How do you think that's going to affect the city?
Okay, for clarification, when Mayor Becky announced that she was leaving, one of the options was for the council to appoint an interim mayor. And Becky asked if I would be interested in that position, and I said I would be. Another option was for the city council to call for a special election, which is what the council decided to do. Now, before the council made that decision, I expressed my personal opinion that I was not interested in running a campaign, that it's something I had no experience with and something I did not look forward to, and I wasn't planning on doing it. But I'll be honest, after Jack declared his candidacy and I thought about it and saw him campaigning for 2 or 3 weeks, I decided, I think voters need another choice. And I decided that choice had to be me because no one else stepped forward. So I'm not enjoying being a politician. It's not something I ever wanted to be, but I feel like I'm doing the right thing.
Jack, do you have any comments in rebuttal?
Yes, the mayor doesn't tell the council how to pick their mayors. The council decides who they're gonna vote into the mayor. We had 2 people who wanted to be appointed, Bobby Marks and Mike Wassell. Both came forward. This could have been resolved back before August. We could have had this vote, but they kept on dragging their feet. I want to be appointed. I want to be appointed. We had people telling me, we have to vote for our mayor. We don't appoint mayors when he got about 2 years left on the term.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Let's go over to our 37th Assembly District candidates. And LaToya, I'm going to give you the opportunity. Do you have a question you would like to ask Mark Bourne?
Sure. Mark, I did a little research, and I should, considering we're both running for the same seat. The State Assembly pays $57,408 per year for Assembly representatives, with an additional pay bump of up to about $23,000 for expenses if you're going to, for the nights or days that you're actually in Madison working. Do you feel that it's justified for basically a part-time position that you earn a full-time salary like that?
Yes, and the legislature in Wisconsin is not a part-time position, and the Joint Finance Committee is not a part-time position, and chair of that committee is not a part-time position. We spend the first 6 months of the legislative session building the 2-year budget, 80-plus hour work weeks. Unlike the legislature in its entirety, the Joint Finance Committee does not take recess. We are still in session now. We just met a week or 2 ago. So that work continues. And the salary is set by the legislature and cannot be increased during our term. And the only increases there's been since I've been in has been just what other state employees get. And so Wisconsin's legislature is not entirely a part-time legislature, and certainly, I've certainly put in appropriate hours to serve this district and the state when it comes to the budget.
LaToya, would you like to add any comments in rebuttal?
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is it's not entirely a part-time position, and people on the Joint Finance Committee work in excess. It looks like that every biennium there's about a standard 4% pay increase for members of the Assembly as well, and additional expenses, as I just mentioned, based upon how often you're in Madison. But it's been written that our state legislators are legislators light because of the decreased amount of workload that we have compared to other states. So you spoke about your own position, and I asked you a question about the Assembly as a whole.
All right, we're going to come back to you folks then. Back to our Beaver Dam mayoral candidates. And Bobby Mark, I'm going to give you the floor right now. Do you have a question for Jack?
Yeah, Jack, knowing that the level of city debt is a major part of your campaign, and since the vast majority of city debt is used to pay for road projects, which specific projects on our list of capital improvements do you propose to cancel in order to lower what you feel is an unacceptable level of debt?
A vast city majority debt is from the police station and a new DPW building. It's not the road construction. We pay for the road construction every year. We borrow $1 million that's paid out by the city every year. So there's debt and there's bad debt. So we're paying $48 million to pay for 2 new buildings right now. It's not the road construction.
Bobby, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
So, but if you want to reduce the city's level of debt, we have to pay for those buildings. So that means we can't build as many roads. So what road projects are you willing to cut?
We haven't canceled any road construction. We're still gonna build the roads. We got the debt, we gotta pay it down, we gotta refinance this stuff. We gotta stop creating positions we don't need.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to our assembly candidates, and Mark, we're going to give you the floor right now for a question for LaToya.
Sure. LaToya, do you support work requirements in our welfare programs? And if so, what would you do if elected to convince the governor to begin enforcing those work requirements that he's been refusing to implement for about 3.5 years now?
There's a lot of focus on the governor, isn't there? All right. I don't know that I would require universal work requirements for people who are receiving assistance and they have children at home. I think that would be more of a case-by-case situation. I think that work search is important. I think that vocational training is important. And I think it is also going to depend upon the age of the children that are at home, if the person has any disability, and if the child has special needs and needs a parent at home taking care of them. I would hope that I could accept that our governor is our governor and work with him and not have competitions to see who is more powerful. I hope that I can also work with all of the people in the Assembly and in the Senate as well, so that we have a collaborative work environment and we're not always stonewalling on party lines.
Mark, response?
Yeah, I think that's one of the misconceptions is about the constant stonewalling. You know, I talked earlier about the historic investments in education, the historic investments in shared revenue. We made some major compromises with the governor in this last budget, in this last legislative session. And those were important things and good things and probably don't get enough attention. But when it comes to the work requirements, they're not required for disabled folks, certainly, and not folks with children, but they are required for childless adults, and we have a real workforce shortage, and you know, I didn't hear ideas on how we can get that going again.
I think we have time for one more round, unless, do you all have additional questions you'd like to ask? Otherwise we can move on to public comment if you'd like. I'll leave it up to the candidates here. We don't.
I'm fine.
Fine. Jack, you're okay?
I'm good.
How about LaToya and Mark?
I'd love to hear what the public has to say.
Well then,
I agree.
then let's do that. We're going to move on to our public comments section. This is the chance here for these nice people in the audience behind me to ask questions of the candidates. Now, before we do that, Tracy from the chamber, we've got some questions that were actually sent in. So maybe give you the opportunity here, Tracy, if you want to grab a microphone, and we'll start with those, and then we'll get to the folks here in the audience.
So from a viewer at home, question for Jack Yudz. You stated on WBEV on Wednesday, October 9th, that you would like to see some city funds go towards homeowners so they can fix up their porches, etc. This is currently being done on the Madison Street through the Downtown Redevelopment Committee, of which I am a member. Being a city alderperson, how come you are not aware that it is already happening? And that's from Rick Fiegel.
I'm plenty aware that we fixing up Madison Street, but what about all the other people? When I went out knocking doors, there were stairs and porches I wouldn't go on because I knew I was going to go right through them. We just can't pick and choose certain parts of town that we should be fixing. We should be fixing the whole town since they all pay taxes. Why should we pick and choose certain parts of town?
Bobby, we're going to give you a chance to respond if you'd like to that same question.
Yeah, I was really excited when the city decided to use federal COVID relief funds for this pilot program. Madison Street is a gateway into the community, and so we set up this fund to help homeowners improve their facades. And the money is matched with city funds. They put in half, we put in half. Unfortunately, to Jack's question, it's about money. And we can't offer it to every single home in the community because we don't have the funds. But we are looking at options, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to continue the program.
Okay, thank you very much. Tracy, did we have any? Nope, that was it for the one that was sent in. Maybe what we'll do here in the audience, then Kevin has got a microphone. He can roam around a little bit. If you have a question for any of our candidates, I'll turn around here a little bit. Please feel free to raise your hand. Kevin can come around with the microphone. And looks like we have one in the back already.
Hello, my name is Mary Kay, and I have a question for Mark Bourne. It's about the school vouchers. Do you have the data on how much the public school system lost when the vouchers were allowed to go to private schools? How much has Wisconsin lost?
Well, I would submit that Wisconsin has only gained by giving families the ability that can't afford it otherwise to make the decision that's best for their children and their families. And the continued increasing investment in education has just continued to rise. And so public schools are receiving a lot more funds than they had in the past. And now there's also an opportunity for families that can't afford to do so on their own to make the decision that's best for their kids and their families. So I would never view that as a loss. And the fact is these investments continue to rise, and we see great private and public schools throughout our state. We also see some that are challenged, but it allows families to make the choices that are best for them.
All right, thank you, Mark.
So
And
you don't have the amount. You don't have the amount of how much switched from public to private. I'm sure that's in a database.
Well, I mean,
you
it
can
started in
access.
1994 in Milwaukee when I was still in high school. And as far as like what the funding today is, I do not have that amount off the top of my head. I don't want to say a wrong number. It's a tiny fraction of the 17.5 billion. I think it's several hundred million of that 17.5 billion, but I don't want to guess a wrong number. It's definitely well under $1 billion, and so it's a small fraction of the total spend on K through 12 education.
Yeah, $1 billion doesn't sound small to me. And my second question is regarding the partisan lines and reaching across partisan lines. I would think that I would have more faith in what you said if you wouldn't be gaveling in and gaveling out right away without even having a meeting. And that's no way to have confidence in your representative when they're not doing their job. Instead, they're showing up to gavel in, gavel out, and go home. So, thank you.
thank you for your questions. I wanted to give LaToya a chance to respond to either of those questions, obviously. Let's give you at least a minute here, since there were two questions.
Do I get a chance to respond to the second one
Well,
at some point?
I guess, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
go ahead.
So which one are you going with now?
You can go.
Well,
It's
go ahead,
Okay.
go ahead.
So as far as the bipartisan work, the fact is every session, 90-some% of the legislation is bipartisan, and certainly in more recent years, everything that's accomplished is because there's a Dem governor, and we have been able, as I said earlier, to do some pretty big reforms. And as far as gavel in and gavel out, you're talking about a couple of procedural things that then often are brought up or discussed in different times and in different ways. And I think that's one of the things that people miss maybe in the question about the wages too, is the legislature isn't just voting on the assembly floor or gaveling and gaveling out. Most of the work, just like in the council, goes through the committee process and gets done there and takes sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, multiple sessions and things. So there's a lot of work going on, and I wouldn't want to see that dismissed so easily just by a couple of procedural things that happen.
Now we'll go over to LaToya.
Okay. I do also share your concern about the amount of money that is going out to private schools. I'm a graduate of private school. I have a whole lot of student loan debt because I went to private colleges. I can understand, as a member of the faith community, the desire to have your child attend private school, and I understand the faith meaning for that. What becomes a challenge is when so much funding is going to these churches and other schools that it puts our public education at risk. Also, very interesting thing, for folks who have special education is paid at roughly 33% at the district. They will repay. For our private schools, many faith-based schools, we have a 90% repayment going to those places. It starts to feel like it's a way to start state funds funding religious organizations, and that does not quite feel fair. I too keep reading about gaveling out. I remember there being a discussion about PFAS that didn't happen, and the assembly saying that the governor doesn't have the right to direct them to have a meeting. And that was fascinating because I'd love to drink clean water, so I thought that was very important. But I think that I heard you, I'm coming. I think that the private school funding is a big issue, and while we may choose to support private school funding, it needs to come with accountability and standardized test scores and objectives as well. I'm done.
Did you have any comments on the second part of her question at all, or no?
Gavel in, gavel out.
Gavel, okay, all right.
I touched on that.
Okay, all right.
I
all
got
right.
beeped twice. You're trying to get me in trouble.
All right. We have additional questions.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Hesed Anzo. I'm in my 30s. My husband and I started this year our first little business here in Beaver Dam, Anzo Cleaning Service. And, you know, this is a passion project for us, but like just the hurdles of starting a little business. I know one of the things was just trying to figure out the correct way to do door-to-door, because there's this thing called transient merchant permit. And I wrote to Dodge County folks, wrote to Beaver Dam, and it took days to like find the right person to tell me what permit I need and how much it costs and the rules about it. I mean, the Beaver Dam Municipal Code is available online, but so I guess one of the ways that I would like to ask the mayor candidates is like, what are ways that you can make that information more accessible to us who are trying to start little businesses? I thought maybe something like a chat GPT on the website that just you pop a question and it spits out the answer, you know, something like that that maybe doesn't take a lot of manpower. It's just the time of setting it up, and it would be a big help to us trying to navigate starting a business.
Bobby, maybe we'll start with you on that.
I will be honest, we recently redid the city website. It is much more user-friendly than it used to be, but I don't think we don't currently have any AI chat box. Is that correct? I'm sure that's an expense that we would maybe have to look at as an investment for the future. But right now, I can tell you better than any chat box is call Tracy Farron in the city clerk's office. And if Tracy Farron can't tell you the correct person and phone number to call, she will make sure that you get that information very quickly.
Jack, any comments to add to there?
I would say call the mayor. That's where you start. He's the top of the city, and you go down from there. He should know who to talk to. The city inspector, the city lawyer, the clerk. He would tell you what direction to go to.
All right. More questions?
I had questions about special ed funding and the discrepancy between voucher private schools and public schools. And I also had a question about gaveling in and gaveling out, because I'm not too happy about that. But so I'll go to my third question that I had. And this would be for the assembly folks. The Legislative Fiscal Bureau previously estimated that the state will end the 2023-2025 biennium with about a $3 billion with a B dollar surplus. What critical investments will you support?
LaToya, we'll start with you on that.
Well, I'm sure it's no surprise I'm about to talk about schools, is it, at this point? I think that we can use some of that money to help our schools. I think that there's a lot of funding that has been cut for a variety of programs. We can invest some money in entrepreneurship, which I love you talking about your small business, and I think entrepreneurship is super important, especially to help with inflation, because the more local businesses we have, the more competitive our prices can get. Did I mention education? Our UW system needs to have funding, especially in our rural communities. Folks don't have a lot of colleges to choose from, and we see UW schools closing, which creates a burden on that entire community. Also education, because education is an important part and aspect for all of our families and children. So that would be vocational programs and training for our adults as well. I think that it's also important to support the infrastructure. We had talked a little bit about the mayoral candidates, talked about roads. State budget can help our municipalities with some of those road issues as well. We need to not be super proud that we have a surplus and look at the ways that we can support our local governments, our local townships, and especially our rural areas.
All right, thank you. And Mark, any response you'd like to make?
Sure. I think it's important to realize that the primary reason we have that surplus is the governor vetoed all the tax cuts. And so, that was part of a big package because we came into this budget with a big surplus and we made those historic investments in education, healthcare, over $1 billion of new money on top of a $6 billion regular transportation budget to focus on those local roads, including a new program that focuses on agricultural roads here in Wisconsin. And so we spent a lot of money in this budget, and part of that then was to return some of that to the taxpayers, which the governor has so far refused to do. And so tax cuts will be a big priority, and then with our growth in this next budget, we will continue those same type of investments in those key areas because those are the things that I hear in this district. And so education certainly will be top of mind again. Roads, local roads especially, and bridges will be an important part of those infrastructure investments. So you'll see more of building on the same successes.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions in the audience?
Good evening. My name is Mick Fisher. I have been an alderman for 16 years, and I am currently in my 14th year as alderman of the 5th Ward. I've listened with interest to what Bobby Marks has said. When I first got on the council in 2010, the city's debt was approximately $12 million. When Mayor Gluen took office, the debt was about $16 million. When Mayor Gluen left office, our debt was $48 million and headed nowhere but up. The statement that Bobby Marks made led me to believe she supports the programs that our previous mayor supported. My question to Bobby Marks is, how would you lower our debt limit, and specifically what programs would you cut?
Okay, first of all, we should recognize what Mick and others have said on the council floor is that one of the reasons the city of Beaver Dam was able to have such a low level of debt is because previous councils, being fiscally conservative, kicked some infrastructure cans down the road. They let projects go too long, and now we're having to play catch up. All infrastructure, whether it's roads, sewer lines, water mains, eventually need to be replaced. And there were some years where our rate of replacement did not keep up, so that we are now behind. And so under Mayor Gluen, she attempted, and again, the council is the one who approves the budget. So the council approved of spending in order to try and get Beaver Dam infrastructure back on track so that we can continue to maintain the assets we have. At some point, it becomes irresponsible not to fix those assets.
All right, thank you, Bobby. And Jack, we're going to give you a chance to respond to that as well.
Well, to bring it down, we've got to look at our assessments. There's property in Beaver Dam that would hold 5 or 6 huge dump trucks, and it's not on the tax rolls. Why is that? The assessor missed it. There's property downtown, the person was telling me, my building's worth $250,000. So I looked it up. It's assessed at $36,000. There's something missing here. This accurate appraisal is not very accurate at their job. We gotta get things back in balance here.
All right, thank you, Jack. Do we have any other audience members that have a question? We do?
In some ways, Bobby, this is addressed to you. In some ways, you've answered my question. But earlier, you talked about how you don't especially enjoy campaigning. That's tough, and I know it's hard. But yet, you are pursuing it because it must be that it's especially important to you. Can you tell us why it's especially important to you?
Again, I will admit I haven't been on city council as long as Jack has. And in fact, Jack has been very welcoming, and as the rest of the council has been. The council itself has been a wonderful organization to learn about what's happening in the city of Beaver Dam. That being said, there's definitely a feeling by some members of the council that the improvements and the changes that occurred in the last administration have gone far enough and need to stop. And I don't agree with that. I think we're moving Beaver Dam in the right direction. While I don't think we need to spend every single penny we possibly can. We have limits. As a council, we have very thoughtful deliberations over our budget numbers down to the digits. But I think we need to move Beaver Dam forward. And so that's why I'm very passionate about becoming mayor. Maybe not running for mayor, but becoming.
Thank you, Bob. Anything you'd like to add, Jack?
Yes, when I was out knocking doors, the first question they asked me is, lower my taxes, fix the streets, and are we done fixing downtown, putting facades on them? I said, my return advice is, it's fine fixing the front of the store. Let's put viable businesses in the stores to make people stay downtown and stay in the city of Beaver Dam. You can shine it up all you want downtown, but there's nothing inside the store. We wasted a lot of money on the outside.
All right. I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Any additional questions right here in front, or no? Over there.
I'm kind of going backwards here, but I want to address this to LaToya and Mark. We've seen an explosion in the private schools in the last few years. Something is driving this. What do you think the major thing is that's driving it? And do you think just putting money into the public schools is going to correct that problem?
LaToya, would you like to go first on that?
Great. That's a good question. I think that there's a couple of different things that are going on. The first thing is that voucher programs have allowed a lot of people to go to private schools where families, when they couldn't afford it or they had to pay for it, that might not have been a high priority or choice. I also know that there's lots of media stories that talk about our public school systems in a negative light over the state, and that's not always the case or the situation. We have really good schools at many places, and we have some schools that are struggling and need, again, opportunities and funding to get there. We talked a little bit about school referendums. Many of our school buildings are old and aging, and if parents are given the opportunity to send their kiddos to this small place that's old and aging versus some place that has great technology, good Wi-Fi, outdoor green spaces, and they also don't have to pay for it, it becomes very difficult to keep them in the public school system.
Thank you. And Mark, will give you a chance to respond to that?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think the first thing that she said is probably the most important thing. Families that couldn't afford it now have the opportunity to make the decision that's best for their kids and their family. That's the whole point. And that's huge. And so to see those kids and families have that opportunity to do what's best for them is great. Also, some of it's in response, though, to some of the failures in some of our public schools. The fact that so few kids can read at grade level in some of the communities. It's not nearly as bad around here as it is in other parts of the state, but there are challenges throughout. And some of it, too, was the way some of school districts responded to COVID and how slow they were to bring kids back into the classroom and how much learning was lost. And a lot of private schools did a better job of that. And so that's part of where those families recognized, hey, we need to make a different decision for our kids. And I think those are the key things that are seeing the growth. But definitely the biggest thing is folks that couldn't afford it can afford it now with some help, and it's not just for rich kids anymore.
All right, thank you, Mark. And that will conclude our public comment section. Thanks again to those in the audience for participating, and also to our viewer who sent in the question from home. At this time, we would like to begin concluding remarks. We'll give each of you another minute to make any final statements that you would like to make, and we're going to go in reverse order this time around. So I'm going to go over to LaToya Bates, and again, thank you so much for being here tonight, and we're going to give you the floor right now.
Well, thank you. We got to the end pretty quickly. I thank you all for being here this evening. I hope that you got answers to questions that you're asking and some information that you need for the upcoming election. I find it very hard, kind of like Bobby said, to be thought of as a politician. I've been an advocate for children and families my whole career. I've been an educator. I've worked in law enforcement. I've worked and supported small businesses, worked for correctional reform, supported our police and firefighters, supported helping and protecting our environment, and I run for office, and all of a sudden everything that I say is political and important. Some of that's good, some of that's a little bit challenging. I just want you to remember I'm not a career politician. I am here because I too wanted to make a difference. I saw that we had an assembly that does not necessarily do a full-time effort all the time, and somehow with this fight between our governor and folks in office, we are paying the price, and that's why I'm here. I have been working hard and knocking on doors. Anytime you give me an opportunity to be in front of people, I want to hear about the issues and help to make Wisconsin better for us, for our families. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening.
All right, thank you so much again. Mark Bourne, we're glad you're here tonight, and we'll give you the floor right now.
Thank you. I was also thinking a little bit about some of the negative commentary towards being a candidate, and I certainly understand it can be tough, and like any job, it has its negative parts. But I like it that it's an opportunity to talk to folks about what's important to them and share what I've been doing on your behalf in the Wisconsin State Assembly. So I certainly view it more a positive way and as an opportunity to do that, and this was that opportunity again tonight. I'm still the same kid that grew up on Charlton Street. It's an honor to represent the community that I grew up in the Wisconsin State Assembly. I don't take that lightly. And I've always promised the same thing every 2 years to the voters of this district. I'll take the common sense conservative values of this district to Madison. That's exactly what my record reflects, with the investments in things like education, healthcare, local roads, as well as more responsible budgeting and tax cuts. So I'm going to continue to fight for those values. If the district wants to continue to send me there, I respectfully ask for your vote in November.
All right, thank you, Mark, and thanks to both of our candidates for 37th Assembly District for being here tonight. We do appreciate you. Let's go over to our Beaver Dam mayoral candidates and give them a chance to make final statements. Bobby, Mark, glad you could be here, and we'll give you the floor right now.
Thanks, Mike. During my years here on City Council, the Beaver Dam Area Development Board, and the Beaver Dam Area Community Foundation, I've learned of the challenges facing our city and the ways that we can work together to address them while being good stewards of our tax dollars. I grew up in a retail family. I worked at my family's retail store on summers and on holidays, and I learned about hard work. I learned about the value of a dollar, and I saw firsthand how my family's business was affected by the fate of the downtown area. The downtown is the heart of any community, and it's important that we support it in order to create a vibrant and welcoming place that serves residents and also attracts visitors and future residents. All these experiences have given me the values, the knowledge, the skills to serve the city of Beaver Dam and move it forward. Finally, for more information, or if you need to contact me, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Mark for Mayor, that's spelled M-A-R-C-K, for Mayor. Or you can visit my website, Mark for Mayor, again, M-A-R-C-K, for mayor.org. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Bobby. And Jack Yudds, thank you again for being here tonight, giving up some of your time, and we'll let you conclude now.
Thank you. I'm here to represent the whole city. I don't consider myself a politician. I answer my phone every time someone calls. I stop and talk to anybody who has questions about the city. I get a lot of questions from out of my district because they can't get a hold of their alderman. That's part of the reason I decided to run for mayor. you gotta represent the whole city, not part of the city, not certain parts, not certain business people. I was a lifelong resident here. I can remember when Monarch Range was here. They did their best to keep businesses out of Beaver Dam. They put people on the city council to keep businesses out of Beaver Dam. So we gotta move this thing forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to all four of you again, and good luck to you as the election goes. Yeah, give them a round of applause, please. Thank you again to our four candidates, and also want to thank Tracy and the folks over at the Chamber for sponsoring this candidates forum tonight. Want to thank my good colleagues and friends at Good Karma Brands, Daily Dodge TV, Ninja, Justin Wilsky's back there in the back. Jeff Hall is over here, the control enthusiast. Kevin Haugen, news director for WBEV, thank you for your assistance. And of course, Craig Caston, timekeeper extraordinaire. Thank you very much. Yes. You'll be hearing that bell for the next few days. No, I'm not taking the bell. My name is Mike Tronson. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here, everybody. Good night.